are a thief! I promise it is not me. I didn't steal any money. Then why is the money in your bag?
He did not steal anything, and you know it. Are you calling me a liar in my own house? This is my house too. You are nothing here, and no one wants the two of you here.
Grace was 4 years old when life first happened to her. She lost her mother. Grace had a younger brother, Daniel. He was only 2. The 2 children too young to understand grief, but old enough to remember its weight.
Daniel would never remember their mother's voice, only the emptiness she left behind. For a long time after, it was just the 3 of them, a struggling father and 2 children who were learning how to survive more than how to live. Life was hard, but there was still something, a fragile kind of love holding them together. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. 10 years passed. 10 years of a struggling father doing his best and sometimes falling short. Then one day, Mr. James made a decision. He decided to remarry. He told himself it was because he was lonely, that he needed help raising his children. So he got married to Sandra. Sandra, who already had 2 children of her own. And overnight, a house of 3 became a house of 6. From the beginning, Sandra was not warm. Not to Grace, not to Daniel. She made no effort to be. There was no pretending, no settling in period, no attempt to build something real. She came into that house and quietly made it clear where her loyalty lies. And it was not with the 2 children who were already there. Mr. James saw it and said nothing. Slowly, quietly. Things began to change. Food became scarce, but not for everyone. Care became selective, but never for Grace and Daniel. Auntie Sandra didn't raise her voice much. She didn't need to. She had found something more effective than shouting. Silence. Exclusion. Isolation. She made Grace and Daniel feel like outsiders in their own home. And their father? He saw it. He saw the favoritism, the distant growing between his children and the rest of the house. And he said nothing. Because life had become easier for him. Less responsibility, less conflict. He told himself his children were old enough, that they would be fine. He lied to himself, and they paid the price. 3 years passed like that. 3 years of hunger and cold shoulders and swallowing pain. But Auntie Sandra wasn't just cruel, she was calculated. She had learned that shouting left evidence. Shouting could be witnessed. Insults could be repeated. So she chose something quieter, something that would not just hurt them, but humiliate them in front of everyone. One afternoon, while Grace was away, Auntie Sandra sent Daniel on an errand, and then she entered the room Grace and Daniel shared. She took money from her purse and placed it inside Daniel's school bag. Then she waited. When Daniel returned, Sandra called everyone, her children, even neighbors. She opened the bag in front of them all and called him a thief. 15 years old, Daniel stood there shaking, unable to speak. Because how do you defend yourself when the lie looks exactly like the truth? When Grace got back and saw what was happening, she pushes through the crowd and stands directly in front of Auntie Sandra to try and confront her. After that incident, something inside Grace changed. She simply decided that she was done. Not defeated, but done. The fight didn't break her, but she had clearly seen enough that some battles are not worth winning because the place itself is poisoned. She has spent 3 years trying to survive in a poisoned home, and she was done waiting for things to change. So while everyone were asleep, Grace woke her brother up and decided it's time they leave. They knew they had no place in their own home, and the only person left to protect them, their dad. He watched for 3 years and said nothing. They had no place else to go, but anywhere is better than their home. They packed in less than 20 minutes. 2 small bags between them that contained only a few clothes. They moved through the house in silence, every step careful. every moment deliberate. No farewell, no note, no dramatic exit. Just two children, 17 and 15, slipping out into the cool stillness of the early morning darkness. The door closed softly behind them, and for the first time in 3 years, Grace breathed. They took a bus to a city 3 hours away. Grace had some money saved quietly over a year, the way people save, when somewhere deep inside they know one day they may need to run. The city they arrived in was loud, indifferent, and terrifying. Their first night was spent at a bus terminal. Daniel slept on Grace's shoulder while she stayed awake all night, watching and thinking how they intend to survive. And while Daniel was fully asleep, she cried. The money Grace had saved ran out by the 4th day. Renting even the cheapest room in the city was far beyond anything they could afford. So the streets became their temporary home. But Grace refused to stop moving. There was no job too small, no task beneath her. She washed clothes. She cleaned homes, ran errands. When the rain came and a woman nearby needed help clearing water from her flooded compound, Grace was there. When a man needed his shop swept and his goods arranged, Grace was there. She was everywhere. She did whatever needs to be done to earn her anything. She carried burdens too heavy for someone her age. But Daniel refused to let his sister bear the burden alone. He carried loads at the market, helps trader in offloading goods from trucks, and also does whatever could earn me anything. And every coin he earned, he brought to Grace. There were nights they cried separately, pretending to be strong for each other, but every morning they got up again. Months passed. They now had a roof over their head, a locked door, and a small space they could proudly call their space. And slowly, Grace built something she did not even realize she was building, a reputation. All through those months of hard work, she worked quietly, thoroughly, consistently, and people noticed. One of those people was Mrs. Sarah, a woman who ran a growing catering business nearby. From time to time, she needed help around her home. Extra hands for cleaning. She had hired different people before. But Grace was different. When Grace worked, she cared. She noticed things others ignored. She finished whatever she starts. And one afternoon, Mrs. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Mrs. Sarah became more than an employer. She became proof that kindness still existed in the world. She paid Grace fairly for her services. She even taught Grace everything on how to run a business, how to manage orders, how to handle customers, how to keep accounts, how to manage money, how to build something real. And Grace absorbed everything. And in no time, she could manage the kitchen even when Mrs. Sarah was away. Within months, their lives began to change. From extra income that came with her new position, and every coin Grace had been carefully saving, they were able to move to a better space. And one evening, Grace sat Daniel down. She told him it was time to return to school. Grace wasn't entirely selfless without a reason. She had already found her path through Mrs. Sarah and the catering business. What they need now was for Daniel to find his. Daniel had always had a dream, but life was just too cruel for anyone to stop and ask him about it. But Grace had seen it, and decided she would not let their circumstances be the reason his dream died. Grace finally started her business, something small, one pot, one burner, and a few neighbors who loved her food. It was proof that they had survived, that they had built something from absolutely nothing, that no stepmother, no silence, no abandonment could determine what they were capable of becoming. Not long after, the building knew her name. Then the street knew her name. Word travels the way it does in close neighborhood about how amazing her cooking was. And in no time, the orders were coming in faster than what a single pot and a single burner could handle. And eventually, Grace was able to open her own small shop and named it Grace's Kitchen. She stood outside that shop for a long time, not thinking about how far she still had to go, but how far she had already come. From a bench at a bus terminal to this, every bit of which she earned. 3 years after leaving home, Grace was 20, Daniel was 18. And one evening, Daniel's phone lit up. An email. his university admission. He read it once, then again, then the third time, because sometimes good news takes time to feel real. When Grace saw it, she cried, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of survival finally meaning something. Back home, Mr. James's life had become unreasonable. With Grace and Daniel gone, the silence inside the house became unbearable. He had once convinced himself his children would be fine. Now he no longer believed that. One evening, he sat alone, and for the first time, he stopped lying to himself. He felt so disappointed in himself for not trying to protect his kids when he had the chance. And finally, he broke. He began searching for them. For months, following dead ends, asking questions, trying to undo a mistake too large to erase. Then one faithful day, he saw a post online from a local community page. A customer praising food from a small local business, Grace's Kitchen. At first, Mr. James would never have imagined it was Grace, his daughter, so he almost scrolled past, but got a little interested in the post because of how the comments confirmed the food and the woman behind the cooking were something special. In one of the photos a customer posted, it had the picture of his daughter standing in the background of her own kitchen. Mr. James couldn't believe that the child he failed was praised by strangers. They said everything he should have been saying all along. Then, he booked a bus ticket. He stood outside her shop for almost 30 minutes, reading the sign above the door with her name on it, Grace's Kitchen. Then finally, he walked inside. Grace was behind the counter, reviewing order. Grace looked up, and for one long moment, neither of them moved. She just looked at him in shock and said nothing yet.
Grace, you look well.
Why are you here?
Because I was wrong. Because I knew and I did nothing. And I have had to live with that every single day.
Do you know where we slept our first night in this city? A bus terminal, on a bench, because we had nobody, not one person in this world.
I'm sorry, Grace. I am so sorry.
Sorry doesn't give us those years back,
I know.
but I suppose it is a start.
Grace didn't plan to end up here. She didn't have a blueprint. She never planned to become strong. She simply had no choice. She had pain, she had responsibility, and she had a decision, a quiet decision, that her circumstances would not define the rest of her life. If you were listening to this and you have ever felt abandoned, if you've ever carried everything alone, if you have ever had to leave somewhere just to save yourself, then you already understand what Grace learned. This survival is not just about food or money or shelter. It is about refusing to let pain become your identity. The people who hurt you do not get to decide your future. They only influenced your starting point, and your starting point is not your ending. Even after the darkest night, morning always comes. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to start again. You are allowed to build something beautiful from the ruins of everything that tried to break you. Grace did, and so can you.